Chosen one, it already happened. Before you clicked on this video, a decision had already been made in the spiritual realm. A season ended, a shift began, and the move you almost overlooked became the very thing that changed everything. This is not a coincidence. You've been wondering why the pressure was so intense, why certain doors closed, why everything suddenly feels different. Because heaven wasn't watching your comfort, it was watching your response. What seemed like a small step to everyone else was a powerful signal in the unseen. And the moment you made that move, everything changed. But why was that one decision so important? And what happened when heaven finally said, "That was it, let's reveal it"? The reason heaven was watching your response is because your response revealed something that even you did not fully understand about yourself. It revealed that you were finally willing to move without seeing the entire path, and that changes everything. For a long time you kept asking God for a sign, another confirmation, another guarantee, another piece of proof that everything would work out. But there comes a moment in every chosen person's journey when heaven stops giving explanations and starts watching for action. That moment arrived for you. The move may have looked small. Maybe it was a conversation. Maybe it was walking away. Maybe it was refusing to go back to something that had already expired. Maybe it was choosing faith when fear was screaming louder than ever. Whatever it was, heaven recognized it immediately. Because that move wasn't just an action, it was evidence. Evidence that you were no longer the person you used to be. Evidence that the waiting season had produced something inside you. Evidence that the lessons finally became part of your character. And character is what heaven trusts with greater assignments. This is why the resistance became so intense before the shift. The enemy sensed something changing. Have you noticed that? The closer you got to making that move, the heavier everything felt. The doubts became louder, the distractions became stronger. Old temptations started reappearing, unexpected delays showed up. People who ignored you suddenly demanded your attention. Nothing about that was random. Spiritual warfare often increases right before a breakthrough that cannot be reversed. Because once a chosen one crosses a certain line, there is no going back. And you crossed it. That is what many people around you still do not understand. They think your battle was about circumstances. But your battle was never about circumstances. It was about agreement. Would you agree with fear? Or would you agree with God's instruction? Would you stay where it was comfortable? Or would you move when heaven whispered? That was the real test. And you passed it. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, but faithfully. And heaven honors faithfulness, even when nobody else sees it, even when nobody else sees it, even when nobody applauds it, even when you feel completely alone. Because the hidden victories are often the ones that trigger the biggest blessings. Something is happening behind the scenes right now, something bigger than you realize. Conversations you cannot hear, doors you cannot see, connections you have not met yet, opportunities that are already moving in your direction. The spiritual realm is never silent. It is always responding. And after your move, the response changed. What used to be delayed is beginning to move. What used to be blocked is beginning to open. What used to feel impossible is beginning to shift. Not because heaven suddenly noticed you. Heaven noticed you long ago. The difference is that now you are aligned with what it was trying to lead you into, and alignment changes everything. If this message is speaking directly to your spirit, comment "Aligen" below as a declaration that you are no longer resisting the direction God has been showing you. And if you're receiving this word, like this video and subscribe to Born into Light so you don't miss what heaven is revealing in this season. Because there is another part of this that most people never hear. The move was not the reward. The move was the key. Read that again in your spirit. The move was not the reward. The move was the key. The reward is what the key unlocks. And many chosen ones stop too early because they mistake the key for the destination. But God is saying, keep going, because what unlocked after your decision is larger than the decision itself. Far larger. You may already be sensing it, a strange feeling. An unusual expectation, a deep knowing that something is different. You cannot explain it, you cannot prove it, yet you feel it. That feeling is not your imagination, it is spiritual confirmation. Your spirit recognizes what your eyes have not seen yet. And this is why some people around you seem uncomfortable lately. Your energy has changed. Your confidence has changed. Your discernment has changed. Your discernment has changed. You no longer chase what is not assigned to you. You no longer beg for what God already promised. You no longer need constant validation from people who cannot see your destiny. That shift is powerful, very powerful, because when a chosen one stops chasing and starts trusting, heaven begins accelerating things that were previously moving slowly. The pace changes, the atmosphere changes, the timing changes, and suddenly things that once took years begin happening in months. Things that took months begin happening in weeks. The momentum changes. That is why the enemy fought so hard to keep you frozen, because frozen people never discover what is waiting on the other side of obedience. But you moved. You moved despite the fear. You moved despite the uncertainty. You moved despite the uncertainty. You moved despite the exhaustion. And that move echoed through the unseen realm in ways you still have not fully discovered. Type I moved if you know God has been calling you into a new season, because there is still something heaven wants you to understand about the exact moment it said that was it. And when you see what happened in that moment, you may finally understand why the pressure became so overwhelming right before everything started changing. Because the pressure was never proof that you were failing. It was proof that a threshold was approaching. There are moments in the life of a chosen one that divide entire seasons, moments that look ordinary while they are happening, moments that seem small when viewed through natural eyes, yet in the spirit they become markers. A line is drawn, an old chapter closes, a new chapter begins, and many times the chosen one does not realize the significance until much later. That is exactly what happened here. When heaven said, "That was it," it was not reacting to one isolated action. It was responding to everything that action represented. Years of preparation, years of disappointment, years of learning lessons you never wanted to learn, years of standing when it would have been easier to quit, years of believing when circumstances gave you every reason to stop believing. The move was simply the visible evidence of an invisible transformation that had already taken place within you. Because God is not only interested in changing your circumstances, He is interested in changing you. And there is a difference. Many people want the blessing. Few are willing to become the person capable of carrying it. Many people pray for greater opportunities. Few allow God to develop greater capacity. Many people want elevation. Few embrace preparation. But preparation is where heaven does its deepest work. Preparation is where hidden weaknesses are exposed. Preparation is where motives are purified. Preparation is where faith is tested. Preparation is where identity is strengthened. And sometimes preparation feels so difficult that you begin questioning whether anything is happening at all. You wonder if your prayers are reaching heaven. You wonder if God remembers the promises. You wonder if the waiting has any purpose. You wonder if the silence means abandonment. But silence does not mean abandonment. Silence often means construction. Think about that. When builders are laying foundations, the most important work happens when nobody can see it. The ground looks empty. Nothing appears to be changing. Yet beneath the surface, everything is being prepared for what will eventually rise above it. That has been your season. A hidden season. A deep season. A season where much of God's work took place beyond the view of others. People saw delays. Heaven saw development. People saw setbacks. Heaven saw strengthening. People saw closed doors. Heaven saw protection. People saw isolation. Heaven saw preparation. The perspectives were completely different. And now you are beginning to see why certain things could not move forward before. You were asking God to release something while He was still shaping the vessel meant to carry it. Had it arrived earlier, it might have crushed you. Had it arrived earlier, it might have distracted you. Had it arrived earlier, it might have become an idol instead of a blessing. But now something has changed. Now there is maturity where there used to be impatience. Now there is wisdom where there used to be impulsiveness. Now there is discernment where there used to be confusion. Now there is stability where there used to be emotional turbulence. You are not who you were, and that matters more than you realize. Because spiritual promotion is rarely connected to what you want. It is connected to who you have become. That truth changes everything. The world measures readiness by talent. Heaven measures readiness by stewardship. The world measures readiness by appearance. Heaven measures readiness by character. The world measures readiness by popularity. Heaven measures readiness by obedience. And obedience is what brought you here. Not perfection, not flawless performance, not having all the answers. Just obedience, simple obedience. The kind that keeps moving even when the road ahead remains unclear. The kind that keeps trusting when visible evidence is limited. The kind that keeps walking when emotions are unstable. The kind that keeps believing when circumstances appear unchanged. That is the faith that moves heaven. And there is another reason the enemy fought your move so intensely. Because he understood something you did not. He understood what was attached to your next season. Sometimes the enemy attacks hardest, not because of where you are, but because of where you are going. He sees the potential impact. He sees the future influence. He sees the people who will be helped because you refuse to quit. He sees the chains that will break because you refuse to quit. He sees the chains that will break because you remained faithful. He sees the doors that will open because you kept walking. And that future threatens everything darkness hoped to accomplish through discouragement. That is why confusion suddenly intensified. That is why fear seemed unusually strong. That is why exhaustion felt heavier. That is why distractions multiplied. The battle was larger than the moment itself. The battle was over momentum, because momentum is powerful. Once momentum begins building in the right direction, entire seasons can change rapidly. A chosen one can spend years being prepared, and then suddenly enter a season where everything starts accelerating. Connections appear, opportunities align, answers arrive, clarity increases, resources show up. Favor emerges, not because God changed his mind, because the appointed time arrived. And there is something remarkable about appointed times. Nobody can force them. Nobody can manufacture them. Nobody can rush them. But once they arrive, nobody can stop them either. That is what makes this season so significant. You are no longer dealing with possibilities. You are dealing with timing. And divine timing has a way of accomplishing in a short period what human effort could not accomplish in years. Which is why the next revelation is so important. Because what shifted after your move was not only external circumstances. Something shifted in the atmosphere surrounding your life itself. Something subtle, something powerful. Something that many people around you can feel without being able to explain. And the signs of that shift are already beginning to appear in ways you may not have fully recognized yet. The first sign is not always what happens around you. The first sign is often what happens within you. There is a different kind of peace beginning to settle over your spirit. Not because every problem has disappeared, not because every prayer has already been answered, but because something deep inside you has stopped panicking. You are starting to realize that God does not need perfect conditions to fulfill a promise. He only needs your willingness to stay aligned. That realization changes the way you see everything. Suddenly, delays do not scare you the way they used to. Closed doors do not devastate you the way they once did. The opinions of people no longer control your emotions. The approval you once chased no longer feels necessary. Something has shifted. Something has matured. Something has awakened. And heaven has been waiting for this moment. Because when fear loses its grip on a chosen one, an entirely different level of purpose begins to emerge. Purpose was never meant to be carried by fear. Purpose was meant to be carried by faith. For too long, you questioned yourself. You questioned your instincts. You questioned your calling. You questioned what God had shown you. You questioned what you heard in prayer. You questioned whether you were strong enough, wise enough, prepared enough. But look at everything you survived. Look at everything you survived. Look at every battle that tried to break you. Look at every season that should have destroyed your confidence. You are still here, still standing, still believing, still moving forward. That is not weakness. That is evidence. Evidence that something greater has been sustaining you all along. And that is why the enemy's strategy is changing. The attacks that once worked no longer work the same way. The lies that once trapped your mind no longer carry the same power. The fear that once controlled your decisions is losing influence. The discouragement that once stopped your momentum cannot hold you the same way anymore. You are becoming aware, and awareness is dangerous to darkness, because once you see the pattern, it becomes much harder to be controlled by it. You begin recognizing distractions before they consume your attention. You begin recognizing manipulation before it alters your direction. You begin recognizing counterfeit opportunities before they steal your focus. You begin recognizing spiritual attacks for what they truly are. And discernment is one of the greatest gifts heaven can give a chosen one entering a new season. Because not every open door is meant for you. Not every opportunity is your assignment. Not every invitation deserves your energy. Not every voice deserves your attention. The closer you get to your purpose, the more important discernment becomes. Because the enemy understands that if he cannot stop you, he will try to distract you. If he cannot destroy your purpose, he will try to dilute it. If he cannot pull you backward, he will try to pull you sideways. Anything to slow the momentum that has begun building. But something is different now. You are not as easily distracted as you once were. You are beginning to recognize the value of your focus. And focus is powerful. Focus creates movement. Focus creates progress. Focus creates momentum. Focus creates results. The enemy fears focused people, especially focused chosen ones, because a focused chosen one becomes difficult to stop, very difficult. The same energy that was once scattered becomes concentrated. The same faith that was once inconsistent becomes steady. The same vision that was once cloudy becomes clear. And when clarity arrives, decisions become easier. You stop negotiating with things God already told you to release. You stop revisiting doors He already closed. You stop seeking confirmation for instructions He already gave. You simply move. And movement changes everything. This is why the phrase, "that was it," carries so much significance. It was not merely about one action. It was about a pattern being broken, a cycle ending, a limitation losing authority, a fear losing influence, a season reaching completion. For years, certain lessons kept repeating. Different people, different situations, different circumstances, yet the same underlying lesson, again and again and again and again, until finally something changed, your response changed, the cycle encountered a different version of you. And because it encountered a different version of you, it could not continue producing the same result. That is how transformation works. Transformation does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it reveals itself through different responses, different choices, different reactions, different priorities, and before long you realize you are handling situations that once overwhelmed you with remarkable calm. You are facing challenges that once terrified you with unusual confidence. You are walking through uncertainty with unexpected stability, not because life became easier, because you became stronger. And strength is one of the hidden rewards of the waiting season. Most people focus on what they are waiting for. Heaven focuses on who they are becoming while they wait. That is why some delays are actually gifts in disguise. Because during the delay, heaven develops muscles you did not know you needed. Patience, wisdom, endurance, discernment, humility, resilience, faith. These are not small things. These are the very qualities that allow a chosen one to sustain what God is preparing to release. Without them, blessings become burdens. Without them, opportunities become distractions. Without them, success becomes dangerous. But now there is a foundation beneath you that did not exist before, a deeper foundation, a stronger foundation, a foundation built through experience rather than theory, and experience creates confidence, not arrogance, confidence. The quiet confidence that comes from knowing God carried you before and will carry you again. The quiet confidence that remains steady even when circumstances fluctuate. The quiet confidence that does not need constant reassurance from people. The quiet confidence that knows heaven is working even when visible evidence has not fully appeared yet. That confidence is becoming part of you. And as it grows, another shift begins taking place. People start noticing something they cannot quite explain. Some will be drawn to it. Others will feel uncomfortable around it, not because you are trying to be different, but because authentic spiritual growth changes the atmosphere around a person. It changes the way you speak, the way you think, the way you carry yourself, the way you respond under pressure, the way you handle adversity, the way you walk through uncertainty. And those changes are creating effects far beyond what you can currently see, effects that are already reaching places you have not yet arrived, effects that are already preparing connections you have not yet met, effects that are already influencing outcomes you have not yet witnessed. Because while you were focused on surviving the battle, heaven was positioning pieces of a much larger picture, a picture that is only beginning to come into view. And when more of that picture becomes visible, you may finally understand why certain doors had to close so completely, why certain relationships could not continue into this season, why certain delays lasted longer than expected, and why heaven seemed so determined to keep redirecting your path, even when you thought you knew exactly where it should lead. Because what looked like redirection was actually protection, and what felt like loss was often positioning. There are things God removed from your path that you may never fully understand on this side of eternity. Conversations that never happened, partnerships that never formed, decisions that somehow fell apart at the last moment, plans that seemed perfect but refused to work. At the time, those moments felt frustrating, confusing, even painful. You asked questions that seemed to have no answers. You wondered why heaven remained silent. You wondered why doors that appeared so promising suddenly shut without warning. But now you are beginning to see a pattern. Every closed door pushed you closer to your true assignment. Every delay strengthened something within you. Every disappointment redirected your focus. Every setback carried a hidden lesson. Nothing was wasted. Not one tear, not one prayer, not one sleepless night, not one moment of uncertainty. God has a way of weaving even the painful parts of your story into something meaningful. That is why the enemy wanted you to quit during the waiting season. Because if you had walked away, you never would have seen what was being built behind the scenes. You never would have discovered how close you actually were. You never would have realized that many of the battles were signs of approaching breakthrough rather than signs of defeat. The pressure was never proof that God had forgotten you. The pressure was often proof that something valuable was being prepared. And preparation requires pressure. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Strength is built under resistance. Faith grows through testing. Character develops through challenges. Purpose emerges through perseverance. The very things that felt like obstacles were often tools heaven was using to shape you. And now you stand at a place where those lessons are beginning to make sense. Not all at once, not perfectly, but enough to recognize that God's hand has been present throughout the journey. Even in seasons where you could not feel it, even in moments where you doubted it, even during days when nothing seemed to move, He was there. working, arranging, positioning, preparing, guiding, protecting, guiding, protecting. And now another layer of this revelation is coming into focus, because the move that caused heaven to say, "That was it," did more than unlock a new season. It revealed a new level of trust. Trust is powerful in the kingdom. God trusted Noah with an ark before the rain came. God trusted Joseph with dreams before the palace appeared. God trusted David with a promise before the throne arrived. In every case, trust preceded promotion. Preparation preceded elevation. Character preceded opportunity. The pattern has never changed, and it has not changed for you. The reason your recent move mattered so much is because it demonstrated trustworthiness. You acted on what heaven revealed. You moved despite uncertainty. You obeyed despite incomplete information. You remained faithful despite opposition. That kind of response creates momentum in the spirit. Momentum that begins opening doors no human effort could force open. Momentum that begins connecting people, places, and opportunities at the appointed time. Momentum that starts moving circumstances that seemed frozen for years. You may already be noticing hints of it. Small confirmations, unexpected encounters, new ideas, fresh energy, a renewed sense of direction. Moments that seem ordinary on the surface but carry unusual significance. Pay attention to those moments, because God often speaks through patterns before He speaks through outcomes. He often sends signals before He sends fulfillment. He often provides glimpses before the full picture appears, and the glimpses are increasing. That is not an accident. That is preparation for what comes next. There is a reason your spirit feels different lately. A reason your perspective is changing. A reason your priorities are shifting. A reason certain things no longer interest you the way they once did. Growth changes desires. Growth changes focus. Growth changes vision. The person who enters the next season cannot think exactly like the person who entered the previous one, and you are changing more than you realize. If this message resonates deeply with your spirit, write "Heaven moved" below, because there is still something remarkable about that moment when heaven declared, "That was it." It was not only the end of one season, it was the beginning of another, and beginnings often arrive quietly, not with fanfare, not with immediate evidence, but with subtle shifts that gradually become impossible to ignore. A door opens, a burden lifts, a connection appears, a strategy becomes clear, a prayer begins moving toward fulfillment. At first, the changes seem small, almost unnoticeable, but over time they begin forming a pattern that reveals God's fingerprints all over your journey. And as that pattern becomes clearer, another truth emerges. The breakthrough was never simply about receiving something from God. It was about becoming someone capable of stewarding what He was about to release. And that realization unlocks an even deeper understanding of why this season is unlike anything you've experienced before. Because this time, you are not standing at the edge of possibility. You are standing in the evidence of preparation. The version of you that began this journey is not the version standing here now. You have been stretched, refined, tested, strengthened, and through every battle, heaven was shaping you for this moment. The moment when God could finally look at your response and say, "That was it." Not because you became perfect, not because every fear disappeared, not because every question was answered, but because you trusted Him enough to move. You obeyed when it was difficult. You stayed faithful when it was painful. You kept walking when nothing seemed to make sense, and heaven saw every step. God saw every sacrifice, every prayer, every tear, every lonely night, every hidden battle. Nothing was ignored, nothing was forgotten, nothing was wasted. The shift has already begun. The door has already opened. The season has already changed. Now your assignment is simple. Keep moving, keep trusting, keep believing. Because what God started, He will finish, and what heaven has released for your life cannot be stopped by fear, delay, opposition, or doubt. If this message confirmed what your spirit has been feeling, type "That was it" in the comments as your declaration of faith. And if you received this word today, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Born into Light, and turn on notifications so you never miss the messages heaven is sending in this season. Remember this, the move was not random, the pressure was not pointless, the waiting was not wasted, and your breakthrough is not an accident. You were being prepared for this all along. God said that was it, and everything changed.